I'm old, I need notes. I barely remember my name. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a great event. I have learned a huge amount today, and my main role in this session will be to kind of steer a bunch of people who have started wonderful companies who have much more interesting things to tell you than I do. But I will say a few things beforehand about why we work. I wrote a book by that title. It's really short, one trip to the bathroom, and you can finish it. And the arguments in the book are a little different from most of what we've been hearing today. What I've been hearing today is mostly the expressed concern of people who want to do the right thing but don't know exactly how to do it. And so there hasn't been much discussion of motivation. There's been discussion of implementation. What data do we need to collect? What practices do we need to deploy in order to achieve our common goal? I think that's a wonderful attitude, and I think everybody in this room shares that attitude, and I think that virtually nobody in the rest of the world shares that attitude. So my interest has been trying to figure out why it is that so few people care about the quality of the work that they ask people to do. We know that we wouldn't work if we didn't get paid, but we also know that pay is not the only reason that we work. Here are some obvious things that people care about when they work. They want to be engaged, they want to be challenged, they want to get good at something, they want to have some control over what they do, they want to have nice, productive social relations with other people, and perhaps most important, speaking to the talk we just heard, they want meaning out of their work, which mostly means they want a sense at the end of the day that they have done some small thing to make someone else's life better. If their work has these characteristics, it's good work. If their work doesn't have these characteristics, it's not good work, even if they're well paid to do it. So the question is, how are we doing? And the answer is, we are doing really badly. Gallup surveys workers around the world on an annual basis. This is a survey from 2014. In 140 countries, 250,000 people, 13% of people were engaged by their work. 63% were not engaged, which I take to mean that they were principally mailing it in. And 24% were actively disengaged. So think about what that means. It means that throughout the world, roughly 90% of people are forced to go every day to do work they don't want to do in a place they don't want to be. And the question is why? And what makes this question more puzzling is that Jeffrey Pfeffer has shown, and others have shown this too, that when you look at the productivity and profitability of companies across many, many different industries, consistently companies that have the most, quote, enlightened management practices are the most profitable companies. What that means is that managers are consistently leaving money on the table. Even if they don't care at all about the welfare of their employees, they presumably care about the welfare of their shareholders, and they're leaving money on the table. And the question is why? And I have an answer to that question. And that answer is what I have come to call ideology, which is a term I borrowed from the oldest Marx brother, Karl. Karl Marx talked about what he called false consciousness, which is what he meant by ideology. It's a set of ideas that we believe to be true that aren't. Now, it's not so bad to have ideas that you believe to be true that aren't. If you're a physicist, you have ideas that you believe to be true that aren't. Eventually, in the fullness of time, empirical research will show that your ideas are false and someone else's ideas are true. In the human sciences, the dynamics are different. Because if you have ideas that are false, you can then implement social structures and practices that work to make the ideas true. And that's what he meant by ideology. Adam Smith, the father of the great Industrial Revolution, said, "It is in the inherent interest of every man to live as much at his ease as he can. And if his emoluments pay are to be precisely the same whether he does or does not perform some very laborious duty, to perform it in as careless and slovenly a manner that authority will permit." What is he saying? We want to be lying on the couch eating chips and watching the Golden State Warriors win another championship. The only way to get our asses off the couch is to pay us. If you pay us, it doesn't matter what you ask us to do. People don't want to do anything. As long as you pay them, you can get them to do anything. This, I think, is what ushered in scientific management the Ford assembly line, and the soul-deadening work that most people throughout the world experience. This is his claim about what people are like. He was wrong. But if you institute a system of factory production of the kind that we have in fact introduced and implemented, all of a sudden he becomes right. Why else would anyone go to a job like that except for the paycheck? He knows this himself. He says, the man whose life is spent in a few simple operations has no occasion to exert his understanding or to exercise his invention in finding out expedients for difficulties which never occur. He naturally loses, therefore, the habit of such exertion and generally becomes as stupid and ignorant as it is possible for a human creature to be. Harsh words, and I'm a big fan of Adam Smith, so I've chosen him at his worst. The two things I want you to notice here, he naturally loses the habit. That means before he entered the workplace, he was different. He generally becomes stupid. That means before he entered the workplace, he wasn't. Right in this quote is evidence that Smith understood that work makes people, work changes people. And the question is, why is it that we have allowed work to change people in ways that have made work unsatisfying and largely unsatisfactory? That's the question I've been focused on. Most people have not worried too much about this, unfortunately, and I'm happy to sort of chair a panel of young, spectacularly ambitious and visionary people who have started companies that seem committed to demonstrating to the rest of the world that Adam Smith was wrong. So please, let's welcome them onto the stage.